in diffusion. Diffusion occurs whenever the concentration is not uniform, whereby you have a particular concentration in a place and another place you have a lower concentration. So osmosis will definitely occur. Then diffusion does not need a semi-permeable membrane, but in osmosis, it is water or the solvent that moves in osmosis, and then there is a need for a semi-permeable membrane. So you don't need a semi-permeable membrane in diffusion, but there is need for a semi-permeable membrane in osmosis. Diffusion continues until concentration is uniform throughout the solution. That is, you continue to have diffusion. It will keep moving until everywhere is uniform and you have equilibrium. Whereby in osmosis continues between these two solutions until the concentration on both sides are the same. Concentration until concentration is uniform in osmosis, then in diffusion, then until concentration on both sides of the membrane is the same. That is when osmosis will stop. Then also, diffusion occurs in dead media or non-living media. Looking at the examples that I've made about diffusion, you discover that there was no living media in it. The perfume, the rotten egg, the atmosphere, it was just a non-living media. But for osmosis, it has to be in living organism. Water will move through living organisms. Then also, diffusion involves the movement of gases, liquids, and solids. But in osmosis, it's only the solvent molecule, which is usually the liquid, that passes through the semi-permeable membrane. Also, the rate of diffusion depends on the molecular weight of substance. Looking at the factors that affect diffusion the other time, I mentioned that the smaller the weight, the higher the rate of diffusion. In osmosis, it depends on the number of molecules on each side of the membrane. Osmosis does not depend on the molecular weight, rather the number of molecules. But diffusion depends on the weight, the size now, while osmosis depends on the number. So those are the differences between osmosis and diffusion. Now to the similarities. What makes them common? Number one similarity is that both osmosis and diffusion involves movement of molecules. Then the movement of molecules is from region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration of molecules in both cases. So it involves movement of molecules, then it involves movement of molecules from region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. Now to the next main process of the cell, we have the plasmolysis. Plasmolysis is a phenomenon where a solution is stronger than the cell sap, which causes water to leave the vacuole by osmosis and enters the stronger solution. Casting your mind back to the illustration I made about hypertonic solution, I said the solution of the external environment of the cell is more concentrated than the cell content itself. So this hypertonic scenario causes plasmosis to occur. The vacuole eventually shrinks because the external solution will prevail. You know, that is the one that is higher. So it will prevail over the content of the cell. So the vacuole will shrink, then the cell membrane will pull away from the cellulose cell wall. So we now say that that cell has plasmolysed, and then it has become flaccid. It will lead to the death of such a cell when the external solution is greater in concentration than the cell itself. Plasmolysis will set in. And I said plasmolysis is the situation whereby osmosis occurs. I said osmosis is the movement of water away from the cell into the external solution. So by the time water leaves the cell becomes flaccid. It becomes plasmolysed. That is, the water will be drained out of that cell. That's plasmolysis for you, because the external solution is higher in concentration than the cell, and this leads to wilting. As in plants, you have the plant part, whether the leaf or the flower, will dry out and it will collapse away from the cell. So that's what plasmolysis is all about. Now, what are the importance of osmosis? Osmosis helps in absorption of water through the root air. Water is absorbed by osmosis through the root air. Then osmotic pressure is maintained in animal blood and other body fluid. That is, there is a balance of movement of water that occurs in the blood of animal by osmoregulation. Then osmosis gives turgidity to plant cells, thereby giving them shape and support. Osmosis ensures the shape and the support of plant. It ensures turgidity of the plant. It ensures that the plant is firm. Another thing is that osmosis controls the opening and closing of the stomatal pores. Therefore, it controls the water loss from the plant during transpiration. Osmosis helps water to be controlled, water loss to be controlled in plants. So you don't always have that there is one day that the sun is so shining seriously and all the water of the plant is lost. No, it doesn't happen that way. Osmosis controls the opening and the closing of stomata such that water loss is controlled in the plant. Then osmosis prevents wilting of plants caused by water loss. This water loss will eventually lead to wilting of plant or the death of a plant when it is not controlled. So osmosis ensures that does not happen. Also, osmosis facilitates reabsorption of water in the kidney tubules. Like I mentioned the other time, in the large intestine, water is reabsorbed. So you don't lose all those water. It's reabsorbed back into the system by the kidney. Now, the next main process that occurs in the cell is phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is also known as cell eating. It's a process of cell eating. I will explain what that means as we go on. This is a process by which large particles get into the cell and is broken down by certain animal cells. Large particles get into the cell and is broken down by certain animal cells called phagocytes. They break down large particles. Then it is carried out by protozoans during their feeding and certain white blood cells when engulfing bacteria. So, white blood cell does this when there is a bacteria that is intruding into the system. The white blood cell just engulfs, just folds around that particular bacteria and prevents its spread or entry into the body system that will be detriment to the body. So this phagocytosis is the one that ensures, this process is the one that the white blood cells undergoes, preventing the attack of bacteria from the body. Also, protozoans also do this. It's a selective process and a discriminating one for that matter. E.g., for example, amoeba will ingest particles that are of nutritional value, while it will fail to take up the food particles that are not of nutritional value to eat. So it selects what it takes, the food particles, and the ones that are not of nutrition value, it just ignores it. So also, white blood cells only attacks bacteria in this process. So it prevents, it helps to defend, yes, it defends the body system against the attack of bacteria by phagocytosis. Now, the next process is pinocytosis. I said phagocytosis is cell eating. Pinocytosis is cell drinking. What is cell drinking? It's called cell drinking because it occurs only in liquid. It's only liquid that is being ingested into the body of the cell across the plasma membrane, unlike the other one that engulfs bacteria and food particles. In pinocytosis, it's just liquid material. It is the same as phagocytosis, but it's only liquid that this is taking in. It involves the local invagination of plasma membrane, which completely encircles minute drop of liquid, which are digested by enzymes from lysosome. So it transports molecules of proteins and hormones through the cell lining the blood capillaries. So this pinocytosis, it works with hormones, with proteins, fat droplets, lipids and the like. So it's only involved in liquid. It's cell drinking. So it ingests liquid across the plasma membrane of the cell. Now the last main process that occurs around the cell is known as the active transport. The active transport is the biological situation whereby molecules or ions move from a region of low concentration to a region of higher concentration against a concentration gradient. So this is like opposite to diffusion that we'll be talking about. Movements of molecules of ion from a region of low concentration to a region of high concentration against a concentration gradient is known as active transport. Active transport requires energy being supplied by respiration. Energy in the cell comes from breakdown of ATP, the adenosine triphosphate. Therefore, anything that stops the formation of ATP will definitely stop active transport because it's solely dependent on the formation of adenosine triphosphate. So once adenosine triphosphate is not produced, then active transport does not take place. Examples of active transport, we have the absorption of sodium, glucose and amino acid into the kidney tubules. When the sodium is absorbed into the kidney tubules, glucose, amino acid, after digestion has taken place. That's an example of active transport. Then